Minutes to 9 is the time from sports to politics, and with time ticking away to the federal election, and we're still waiting to hear on a date, the seat of Barker has seen a fair bit of activity in recent months. We've got Miles Hanneman replacing James De Barrow. The Mayor of Grant District Council, Richard Say's, thrown his hat into the ring as an independent. Tony Passon representing the coalition. And Family First candidate Kristen Lambert, who we spoke to last week. This week we have a candidate from the Greens. His name is Mark Keogh. Good morning, Mr. Keogh, and welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning, Stan. Pleasure to be with you.
What sort of issues would you feel we should be feeling strongly about here in Barker?
Yeah, well, Barker's a really interesting seat because it has four really distinct population centres in the regional part of South Australia. There's the Riverlands. There's a significant proportion of Barossa Valley is in Barker, and then the Murray Bridge area, the Lower Murray area, and then of course the whole of the southeast. So I think each of those areas have different issues depending on what happens day to day in those areas. But they have a few things in common, and I think one of the important things in this election is that the things that we have in common are represented by a strong voice. So some of those things might be the importance of sustainability on the land, both from a environmental point of view and from an economic point of view. We're certainly very supportive of the idea that people who work on the land can have an adequate on-farm income for them and their families. It's a very important principle for the Greens. Among other things, another one perhaps is making sure that the seat of Barker gets a fair deal, a decent deal out of the rollout of the NBN, and so that people can be using that technology again to improve their economic circumstance in any of these population centres.
Now, at the moment, you're not a resident of Barker. Would that change if you were elected?
Oh, certainly. But I grew up in Murray Bridge, and I know the region very well. I've lived and worked in the region on and off in my career, and certainly I would live in Barker. As I said, it's an interesting point. If you live in Mount Gambier, you need to be looking after people in Renmark, and if you live in Angaston, you've got to get to Mount Gambier. So it's a very large electorate. Barker and Grey, two of the largest electorates in the world, actually, in terms of spread. So it does require travel and getting to know people, whatever you do.
Speaking to Mark Keogh this morning, who is the Greens candidate for the federal election for the seat of Barker. Why the Greens?
Well, I've spent a long time thinking about politics. I was a councillor in the Port Adelaide Council during the 90s, so I've had a period in some degree of public service before. What I find nowadays is the Greens are the only party, from my point of view, have any kind of focus on the future. I think we're all a little sick of the sort of battering that goes on in Canberra, and there seems to be such a focus on short-term power. We're not about that at all. The Greens are a party for the future. We're a new way of thinking about politics. We're not isolated independents. We do act together. We do have a strong policy platform. I'd encourage anybody who's really interested in the Greens to have a serious look. We tend to get painted as sort of a marginal group, but that's not the case at all. The people I hang out with are very thoughtful. They represent a broad cross-section of society. And the one thing we do have in common is this focus on a sustainable future. We want to make sure that the planet and all the wonderful assets we have in South Australia are around for our children, our grandchildren, and their children as well.
What interest and what is your view on marine parks? Because that is an issue that does affect many people in this part of Barker.
Well, this question is the case. It's a very good example of where the Greens have a lot of strength. What we want to make sure is that the area, not just the land, but also the assets we have offshore are sustainable, that we care for the environment, we don't create short-term gains at the loss of a sustainable environment. But we also recognise people earn their income offshore as well. And so, the Greens are a party of collaboration and consensus. And we don't approach anything from the point of alienating any one party. But I'll tell you one thing, we'll always stand up for the future. that's what we're about.
And of course, you'd have to get to know a little bit about commercial fishing because the fishing industry is pretty strong, again, in our part of Barker.
Sure. Absolutely. Look, I have some awareness of the issues that people are raising, and, I'm a very easy to talk to sort of person, so I'm looking forward to meeting people involved in the commercial fishing sector in the southeast for sure.
Mr. Keogh, once the election date is announced, we will put you in our diary and have a chat to you before the next election.
I'd certainly look forward to it, Stan. Thanks for talking to us this morning.
Mark Keogh, who is the new Greens candidate.